Here are the headlines for Wednesday evening, August 28, 2024. Several states refuse to remove Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s name from ballots, hurting Donald Trump. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s name remains on the ballot in several key states, including Michigan, Wisconsin, and Colorado, despite his withdrawal from the presidential race and endorsement of former President Donald Trump. State election officials have cited laws and regulations that prevent candidates from withdrawing once they have qualified for the ballot. The decision has been met with criticism from Kennedy himself, who had expressed concerns that staying on the ballot could hand the election to the Democrats. These are the fastest growing and shrinking cities in the United States and Canada. Despite having a population just 12% the size of the United States, Canada was home to a majority of the fastest growing cities between the two neighboring countries in 2023. 8 out of 10 of the top growing cities were in Canada, with Toronto seeing the highest increase in population, adding over 120,000 people to the city. In contrast, major United States cities like New York, Chicago, Portland, Los Angeles, and Philadelphia experienced significant population decreases, with New York City losing over 70,000 people. Not a single large central city in Canada saw a net population loss in 2023, largely driven by immigration, with Toronto being a hub for immigration. Telegram CEO Durov transferred to Paris court. Criminal indictment looms. Pavel Durov, the 39-year-old billionaire founder of Telegram, was taken into custody at Paris's Bourget airport over the weekend and has been held for questioning without formal charges. However, he has now been transferred to a Paris court to face a judge in preparation for possible indictment on charges including complicity in the distribution of child pornography and selling of drugs, money laundering, and refusal to cooperate with law enforcement. French prosecutors say Durov will face initial questioning and possible indictment at the court. President Emmanuel Macron claims the arrest is not politically motivated, but rather a rule of law issue, despite previous attempts by the government to recruit Durov to move Telegram's operations to France and offer him citizenship. 5 signs that the United States is collapsing. The United States is facing significant economic and moral challenges that threaten its stability and unity. Without a shared sense of right and wrong, societies fall apart, and the U.S. is no exception. Despite being the world's largest economy, most Americans are not benefiting from growth, with stagnant wages and rising debt. The national debt has surpassed $31.8 trillion and continues to increase at an alarming rate, with interest payments alone expected to reach $10.5 trillion in the next decade. If the government fails to stop excessive spending and borrowing, the country will eventually collapse under its own weight, leading to widespread social unrest and economic devastation. NVDA dumps and pumps after smashing second quarter expectations, but guidance is a mixed bag. NVIDIA reported impressive revenue growth in the second quarter, beating estimates across the board, but its guidance for the next quarter was modestly lower than expected. The company's stock price initially bounced after hours, but then dipped as much as 6% before regaining some ground. NVIDIA also announced a massive new $50 billion buyback program and provided an update on its troubled Blackwell chips, saying it expects to ship several $billion in revenue from the product line in the fourth quarter. Despite some concerns about growth, analysts expect NVIDIA's strong free cash flow generation and commitment to shareholder returns to drive its stock price higher. 2,000 workers gone. Klarna is first major company to unleash mass layoffs thanks to artificial intelligence. Klarna, a Swedish fintech company, is planning to axe almost half of its 5,000 workers due to the increasing use of artificial intelligence in tasks, such as customer service and marketing. The company's CEO, Sebastian Siemiatkowski, has heralded the benefits of artificial intelligence, stating that Klarna can do more with less and is aiming for a workforce of around 2,000 employees in the coming years. This move comes as Klarna gears up for an initial public offering, which could value the company at between $15 billion and $20 billion. The use of artificial intelligence is expected to be a key selling point for the IPO, with Siemiatkowski highlighting its benefits in increasing revenue per employee and reducing costs. Venezuelan migrant driving for Amazon hits mother and 4-month-old child, flees the scene. A Venezuelan migrant working for Amazon drove her truck into a Florida mother who was pushing her 4-month-old child, causing the mother catastrophic injuries and throwing the child into the street. The driver, Sarahi Perra-Ovales, entered the United States on a tourist visa in 2019, which expired in 2021 but was granted temporary protected status that same year. Perra-Ovales briefly stopped to upright the stroller and place the baby back in its seat before fleeing the scene, and she was later released on bond after being arrested. The mother suffered severe injuries, including a brain injury, a fractured skull, and a brain bleed, and her lawyer criticized the justice system for releasing Perra-Ovales so quickly, saying that it put other drivers at risk. Bug diets, once labeled conspiracy theory by mainstream media, now becomes fact after United Kingdom government backs sustainable food. The British government is backing a research center that aims to promote the consumption of insects as a sustainable food source. The National Alternative Protein Innovation Center will work to make insect-based products more palatable to the public and reduce regulatory barriers to their sale. This effort is part of a broader trend towards lab-grown meat and alternative proteins, with Bill Gates investing in a company that produces cultured chicken and the World Economic Forum promoting similar initiatives. However, some critics argue that this push for sustainable food sources is part of a larger agenda to control the global food supply chain and promote a diet of insects and fake meat. West Bank explodes overnight with largest Israeli Defense Forces raid in decades. Evacuations could be next. A major Israeli military operation in the West Bank has resulted in at least 10 Palestinian deaths, including 3 from a targeted drone strike, as hundreds of troops raided Jenin, Tulkarim, and Tubas. The Israel Defense Forces claim that 9 of the deceased were armed terrorists who posed a threat to security forces, while also rounding up wanted suspects and uncovering explosive devices. Foreign Minister Israel Katz has called for potential evacuations in parts of the West Bank, sparking concerns about ethnic cleansing, as Israeli leaders describe the situation as war. The policy desperation of Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris's leadership style is being questioned due to her tendency to be malleable and impressionable. This trait may lead her to be swayed by others' opinions, rather than standing firm in her own beliefs. In contrast, a strong leader should be able to withstand external pressures and think independently. Harris's efforts to please everyone have led to accusations of flip-flopping on key issues, which could ultimately harm her credibility with both her existing base and potential new voters. Elon Musk offers free cellular Starlink for emergencies worldwide as space race with legacy mobile carriers heats up. SpaceX's Starlink direct-to-cell service will offer free emergency services access worldwide for mobile phones in distress, subject to approval by country governments. This move comes as SpaceX faces opposition from legacy mobile carriers, AT&T and Verizon, who are attempting to derail its direct-to-cell technology. Despite the interference, SpaceX has successfully tested its technology and plans to launch commercial operations later this year with partner T-Mobile. The company's CEO Elon Musk is confident that the service will provide critical access for people in need and has refuted claims of potential radio interference. Mexico pauses relations with United States, Canadian embassies amid judicial reform concerns. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador announced a halt in relations with the United States and Canadian embassies after their ambassadors expressed concerns over his judicial reform proposal. López Obrador stated that the embassies must respect Mexico's sovereignty for relations to be reestablished, but did not elaborate on the potential effects of the pause. The United States ambassador to Mexico, Ken Salazar, had criticized the reform proposal as a major risk to Mexico's democracy and claimed it could allow drug cartels to exploit the judiciary. While Canadian ambassador Graham Clark said investors are concerned about the stability of the judicial system, Ford will modify diversity, equity, and inclusion practices, and lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer or questioning ranking, report says. Ford Motor Company is scaling back its diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, joining the ranks of other megacorporations that have either ended or altered their woke initiatives. The company has notified employees in an email that it will modify DEI practices and end its participation in LGBTQ rankings. This move comes as anti-woke crusader Robbie Starbuck has led a campaign against progressive corporate America, resulting in companies such as Tractor Supply, John Deere, Harley-Davidson, Jack Daniel, and Lowe's either ending or winding down their DEI activism. The United States warns tanker hit by Houthis could cause largest ship oil spill in history. The United States Pentagon has warned that an oil tanker attacked by Yemen's Houthis last week is still on fire and could be leaking oil into the Red Sea, threatening a severe ecological disaster. The Greek-flagged crude oil tanker Sunyan was targeted with 3 projectiles, sparking a fire and disabling the engine, and its crew were rescued by a French naval vessel after drifting for a day. The Houthis, who control most of Yemen, claim their attacks are in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza and have posted a video purporting to show them setting the ship alight. The tanker is carrying more than 150,000 tons of crude oil, which could lead to an oil spill 4 times larger than the 1989 Exxon Valdez disaster if it were to occur. Please bring signs. Marylanders to protest artificial intelligence data center power lines as eminent domain threatens small farms. A power line dispute is unfolding across the Mason-Dixon demarcation line separating Pennsylvania and Maryland, as approximately 10,000 residents of Maryland in a Facebook group are protesting against flawed green energy policies implemented by far-left lawmakers in Annapolis. The policies have led to the likelihood that eminent domain will be used to seize small farms to construct high-voltage power lines for artificial intelligence data centers. Away from earnings by the most important company in the world, a lot is going on. Germany is facing economic crisis, with recent data showing a decline in consumer confidence and private spending, while state spending surged due to hosting Euro 2024. The far-right AF and far-left BSW parties are expected to win over 50% of the votes in upcoming elections, adding to the country's political instability. Meanwhile, other countries such as Australia, Japan, and China are also experiencing economic and political challenges, including high inflation rates, territorial disputes, and rising regional tensions. The United States is also facing internal conflicts, including a contentious presidential election and debates over government spending and efficiency. Super Micro shares plunge 15% after company delays 10K, one day after Hindenburg alleges accounting manipulation. Shares of Super Micro Computer plummeted over 15% after the company announced it would delay its 10K filing for fiscal year 2024 due to needing additional time to complete its assessment of internal control. This comes one day after short seller Hindenburg Research released a report alleging fresh evidence of accounting manipulation at the company, including undisclosed related party transactions and customer issues. The report also highlighted Supermicro's relationships with disclosed and undisclosed related parties controlled by CEO Charles Liang's brothers, which have been paid $983 million in the last 3 years. Unwind of China's great carry trade could unleash $20 billion in monthly foreign exchange sales. China's trade balance reached $852 billion in the year, leading up to July due to weak domestic demand and Chinese manufacturers gaining global market share. However, less attention is given to how this foreign exchange surplus is recycled, which could be crucial for the Chinese exchange rate in the coming months. Typically, goods traders convert their net export proceeds into renminbi, but recently they have been reluctant to do so due to higher interest rates on foreign exchange deposits and weak sentiment towards the renminbi. However, with the Federal Reserve considering cutting interest rates, the interest rate differential may shift back in favor of Chinese assets, changing the conversion calculus for exporters and potentially leading to an increase in foreign exchange sales by goods traders. Binance defends seizing Palestinian funds at Israel's request. Binance, a cryptocurrency exchange platform, has seized the accounts of numerous Palestinian users at the request of the Israeli government, alleging links to illicit funds and terrorist organization. The Israeli Ministry of Defense claims that cryptocurrencies transferred by declared terrorist organizations constitute property used to commit serious terrorist offenses. Binance CEO Richard Tang stated that only a limited number of user accounts linked to illicit funds were blocked from transacting, but the company has yet to provide details on the number of affected users and when the restrictions were enforced. The move has been met with criticism, with some arguing that it sets a precedent for governments to seize assets without due process. Yield curve shifts offer signals for stockholders. A bear steepening trade occurs when the yield curve shifts upward, with short-term yields increasing more than long-term yields, causing the curve to steepen. This shift is often a result of the economy growing above its natural rate, leading to higher interest rates, which can impact the economy and stop inflation from falling. In contrast, a bull flattener trade involves short and long-term maturity bond yields declining with longer end yields falling more, resulting in a curve flattening. A bear flattening trade is characterized by yields rising across the curve, with shorter maturities rising the most, causing the curve to flatten and invert. These shifts can have significant implications for stock indices, sectors, and factors, and understanding them is crucial for making informed investment decisions. Florida can enforce ban on puberty blockers, gender surgeries for children, appeals court. A federal appeals court has allowed the state of Florida to enforce a ban on hormone replacement therapy for children while a legal challenge against the ban proceeds. The decision reverses a district judge's order that put the ban on hold, allowing Florida to restrict sex reassignment surgeries and medication such as cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers to anyone under 18 years old. The law also places restrictions on adults seeking gender transition treatment, requiring them to receive such treatment exclusively from a physician and sign a consent form in person. Big tech, bullion, and Bitcoin battered before Nvidia's big night. The Nasdaq stock market was severely impacted today, while all major stock markets experienced significant declines in 2 intraday sessions. This led to a wave of buying the dip as the last hour began. Mag 7 stocks declined for the 5th consecutive day, erasing post-Powell euphoria. The dollar regained 75% of its losses following Powell's comments, and Treasury yields rose across the curve by 1 to 2 basis points. Bitcoin experienced significant declines before finding support at $58,000, while gold plummeted before finding support at $2,500. It's not the economy, it's Nvidia's margins, stupid. No modifications needed. Simon White, Bloomberg macro strategist highlights the importance of NVIDIA's profit margins for supporting the market as they have become the main driver of returns in the technology sector, particularly with NVIDIA's earnings release today. Yields hit session high after 5-year auction tails. The United States Treasury sold $70 billion in 5-year notes at an auction that saw yields tumble 46.8 basis points to 3.642%, the lowest since April 2024. The bid-to-cover ratio was effectively unchanged from last month at 2.41, and the internals were stronger, with indirect bids awarded 70.5% of the total. Despite this being a mediocre auction on the surface, the demand for the notes was solid, but yields are rising to session highs, with the 10-year yield climbing above 3.84% for the first time today. WI extends losses after smaller than expected crude draw. Crude oil prices extended their losses as the market focused on Libyan supplies, key technical indicators, and United States inventory data. Despite outages in Libya, top Wall Street banks such as Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley have lowered their price forecasts for next year due to a broadly bearish undertone. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies are scheduled to increase output in October, but this decision is uncertain given the fragile market backdrop. Meanwhile, United States crude stockpiles declined for the 8th week in 9, with gasoline inventories tumbling and distillates building modestly, although less than expected. NVDA options into earnings. Bank of America outlines the logic for hedging potential downside risks in NVIDIA NVD, a stock by using Standard & Poor's 500 Index SPI, puts spreads instead of NVDA-based hedges. The firm suggests that investors may be underestimating the risk of a disappointing results from NVDA, which could have broader implications on the market. To mitigate this risk, Bank of America recommends buying SPY6, September 555 to 545, put spreads for over 5 times maximum payout. Stocks shrug off for now, surge and uneven hard landing bets. Equities in the United States have rebounded strongly over the last month from growth scare panic lows. However, bonds do not appear to be following the trend set by big technology companies, with 2-year yields falling back below 4%, suggesting anticipation of economic conditions that are far from ideal. JPM Morgan's Delta One desk lays out the top market drivers. Here's the summary in one paragraph. Equities continued to rise last week despite subdued turnover, while hedge fund performance improved to plus 1.1% month to date versus flat as of August 15th. Futures likely contributed to increased positioning, reversing a trend from late July to early August, when futures were a major driver of the sell-off. In contrast, hedge funds sold stocks in North America during the market strength, and retail investor flows in single stocks turned negative last week, with 5-day retail flows in line with the weakest seen year to date. Stubbornly stressed stocks. The National Association of Securities Dealers Automated Quotations NASDAQ is continuing to lose momentum and risks putting in a significant second lower high. The NASDAQ is currently trading below its 50-day average once again, and the 100-day average is down at $19,000.